There will be blood. At the beginning of the movie, we see Daniel Plainview digging underground in 1898 in New Mexico, hoping to find something. Finally, he finds something that will yield gold or silver. In that pit, he puts some dynamite to create a bigger hole, but when he re-enters the pit after the explosion, he falls into it and broke his right leg. This isn't enough to make him give up right away. He puts this silver inside his shirt and climbs out while dragging his broken leg. Then he drags his body all the way to town, takes a sample to an assay office, and receives a silver and gold claim. In 1902, he started his own oil business and started a drilling company. Therefore, make a large-scale machine so that many prospects can be lifted at once. During the work, a part of the machine broke and fell down, and due to which one worker died. Daniel Plainview adopted the worker's orphaned child as his own, named H.W. Plainview, who became his nominal business partner. From then on, Daniel goes from town to town with a heartwarming speech for people to choose him over other big companies when it comes to leasing their land for drilling, using his son to convince them that he is a family man that works with honest local workers and doesn't cause trouble, unlike corporations. But no one paid any attention to his statement. Then in 1911, one day he told Mr. Bankside and his wife that if they would sign him up for the job of drilling a well within 10 days, the well would soon be up and running. The work can be started, and it is not possible if the field dries up. Whenever Mrs. Bankside asks him about his wife, he just says she died at childbirth. Another day in 1911, Daniel is approached by an unknown named Paul Sunday, a young man who tells him of an oil deposit under his family's property in Little Boston, California. Daniel tries to get the details out of him, but Paul was smarter than Daniel thought and demands a lot of money for the information, which ends up getting $500 in exchange for the location of his family's goat ranch, where he swears plenty of oil will be found. Several days later, Daniel and H.W. go there and visit the Sunday's property, pretending they are merely hunting for quail. They meet Paul's father, Abel Sunday, who offers them his hospitality, including some water and some goat milk brought to them by one of their daughters, Mary Sunday. While setting up camp, they also meet Paul's twin brother, Eli Sunday, a local pastor who promises to bring them dinner. While investigating the area, they discover Paul had been telling the truth and there is oil in this land. Daniel thinks this is a great spot to build a pipeline, take it to the beach, and strike a deal with Union Oil, therefore avoiding the costs of railroads and shipping. Later, after having dinner with the family, Daniel attempts to purchase the farm from the Sundays at a bargain price under the ruse of using it to quail hunt, and his sick son needs the fresh air. But his motives are questioned by Eli, who knows the land has drilling potential. Daniel offers a very low number, and as Eli knows about the oil, Eli demands $10,000 for his church. Daniel changes it to $5,000, and only if the business goes well, then pressures Abel into accepting it and neglected to negotiate with Eli. The next day, Daniel goes to see a realtor to ask for information about all the landowners around the Sundays so he can look into buying them as well. He also calls his business partner to tell him to bring all his employees to the area to start working. An agreement is made and Daniel acquires all the available land in and around the Sunday property, save for one holdout. H.W. begins spending time with Mary and learns that his father hits her if she doesn't pray. As days pass, the business slowly but surely begins growing. Daniel manages to buy all the surrounding land except the one belonging to William Bandy, who wants to speak with him face to face. He also gives the local town a speech about how oil drilling equals an opportunity to grow, because his employees come with their family, so they'll start schools, wells, new roads, and lots of cultivation, and all of that means employment. After days of building, the well is ready to get started. Eli asks permission to bless the well before drilling begins. Daniel initially agrees, but then ignores him when the time comes, and he offers a few words with Mary by his side, including a quick blessing, and never allows Eli to participate as well. H.W. is the one to pull the lever, and the driller begins working without issues, so afterward the town has a big celebration. Right in front of Abel while he is eating, Daniel talks to Mary and promises her dad will not hit her anymore. Oil drilling begins, and that night there occurs an accident in the well and they lose an employee. Daniel scolds his men for not warning each other correctly when someone goes down there. Many days later, while working, the workers find a gas leak that causes an explosion. H.W. is there when it happens, and Daniel rushes to rescue him before the fire begins, But by the time they go back to the house, the damage has already happened, and HW is deaf now. The drilling tower eventually crumbles down, but the fire continues. So the next day they use dynamite to put it out because it forces the burning fuel and oxygen away from the fuel source. That night, Daniel sleeps cuddling his son, but as days pass, HW continues to stay in bed depressed. So Daniel begins working on finding him a teacher from the city. When Eli publicly demands the money still owed to him, Daniel beats and humiliates him. At the dinner table that night, Eli attacks his father Abel and even goes as far as to jump on him and throw him to the floor while insulting him for trusting Daniel. A few days later, a mysterious man appears at Daniel's door claiming to be Henry Plainview, Daniel's half-brother from another mother, who proves himself by showing him a letter from their sister where she tells him their father died there 3 months ago. Henry tried to do some drilling in the past too, but never was successful as his brother. He also got into some trouble and was in jail for a while. After Daniel puts HW to sleep by making him drink milk mixed with liquor, the siblings share some cigarettes, and Henry swears he hasn't come for the money or any favors. He is just looking for honest work, and Daniel allows him to stay. A jealous HW sets fire to their house, intending to kill Henry, but somehow they survive. Daniel sends HW away to school for the deaf in San Francisco. Sometime later, Daniel and Henry have a meeting with some representatives from Standard Oil who want to buy his entire business and land. Daniel seems to be willing to listen at first, but he is not sure what he would do if he didn't work. The representatives keep mentioning he could spend more time with his son, and Daniel takes it as a perceived slight and turns down the offer, leaving while very offended. Daniel refuses and instead strikes a deal with Union Oil to build a pipeline to the California coast. However, Bandy's ranch remains an impediment, with whom he never visited to talk. He goes to see him, but he is not at his house. Only his grandson is there and tells him they will never allow him to drill on their property. Daniel says he doesn't want to drill and promises to talk to Bandy later. Then he goes out with Henry to put various metal stakes on specific spots around the land. After an afternoon spent swimming with his brother, Daniel tells him some stories about their good old neighborhood, and Henry's answers make him suspicious. Later in the evening, he lends Henry some money so he can hire a girl, and when he comes back, Daniel confronts him with a gun. Henry admits he is a nobody who met the real Henry in the city, and they became friends while working together for months. The real Henry did want to visit his brother, but they didn't have enough money, and he eventually died of tuberculosis. So he used the stories he heard from Henry and his diary to pretend to be him. He swears he means no harm, but Daniel shoots him in the head anyway and digs out a grave to hide the body. Afterward, Daniel drinks heavily and weeps. The next morning, he's found by William Bandy, who knows what he did to the fake Henry. Bandy turns down the money offers Daniel throws at him and tells him he will let him build the pipeline through his property if he gets baptized, as Daniel has no other choice but to accept because he doesn't want to lose money with his project. Bandy takes Daniel to church, and during Mass, Eli brings him to the front and makes him kneel and admit he has sinned and abandoned his child. After slapping him multiple times to get the devil out, he pours holy water on his head and officially baptizes him. Later, while the pipeline is being built, HW is reunited with Daniel. Then Daniel tells him how much he loves him and lets HW hit him as an answer. A teacher has also come with him so he can continue to learn sign language. Daniel takes HW out for lunch, and in the restaurant, they come across the men from Standard Oil. Daniel can't help but making a scene to show them he is being a good father that takes care of his son while having a successful deal with Union Oil. Meanwhile, Eli leaves Little Boston to go do missionary work. In 1927, HW marries Mary Sunday, the sister of Paul and Eli, who has learned sign language too to communicate with them. Daniel is rich because of his oil pipeline business and lives in a mansion with servants, and one afternoon HW visits him together with an interpreter. He tells his father that he loves him, but he misses working in the fields, so he and his wife Mary are leaving for Mexico to start their own drilling company. Daniel isn't happy to hear this, claiming this makes HW his competitor, no matter how his son denies it is not like that. He also keeps using demeaning vocabulary to refer to his sign language and demands HW to use his own words, so he repeats he's going to Mexico with his own voice. This is still not enough to calm Daniel down, who now tells him he is destroying his image and admits he is not his son, revealing his true origins as a bastard from a basket. HW tells Daniel he is glad that they are not related and walks out. Depressed and alcoholic, Daniel falls asleep in his bowling alley. A servant wakes him up when Eli comes to visit him and tells him about his work as a missionary and at the radio station. He also tells him Bandy has died and now his grandson is the owner of the land. That grandson is also part of Eli's church, so he offers himself as an intermediary if Daniel is interested in making business with him to drill that land. Daniel tells him he would be interested in doing business with Eli, but first he must admit he is a false prophet and God doesn't exist. It seems Eli really needs to get this deal going because after some hesitation and asking for $100, he accepts to yell those words in the room the same way he made Daniel admit his sins in church years ago. After that, Daniel confesses that area actually doesn't have oil anymore. He stole it by draining it through neighbor areas when he built the pipes. Desperate, Eli confesses to having lost money in the 1929 stock market crash and having strayed morally, so he asks Daniel for help. But Daniel doesn't feel pity for him. He taunts him by telling him Paul is the real chosen one by the Lord. He is a successful man now thanks to the business he opened with the $10,000 Daniel paid him for the information. He keeps on insulting him and calling him names. So when Eli asks him to please stop, Daniel grabs him, throws him in the middle of the alley, and after tossing some bowling balls at him, he hits him with a bowling pin on the head, killing him. The servant hears the noise and appears to ask about the commotion. Daniel announced, "I'm finished."